Well, hey folks, this is the story of Devyn Michaels and her love triangle beheaded case. It's a twisted mix of a former adult porn star, a custody battle that turned toxic, and a secret marriage to her ex's son, all around a murder that was so brutal that investigators found the victim headless and drenched in chemicals. Well, Michaels is now convicted of committing the brutal homicide here in Las Vegas, something that prosecutors allege she did with a kitchen meat cleaver. So let's review the relationship, the murder, and the timeline. The victim's head, it's never been found, but a jury found her guilty of homicide. Well, hey everybody, I'm coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. I decided to pull over into a truck stop because it kind of reminds me of a murder case I worked along this stretch of freeway here, where a serial predator, a truck driver named Robert Ben Rhodes, was picking up and then later killing women. I'm going to be in town actually speaking at a conference on how to reduce personal risk and how to improve your personal safety. It's the kind of things that we talk a lot about here on Profiling Evil. But while I've been here teaching about staying alive and staying aware, this case, just a few miles away, unfolded in Clark County's courtrooms. And it sounds like something out of a horror film. So again, with all the background noise, the wind, I thought it would be the perfect place to do True Crime Tuesday. Now think of this former adult film star who was involved in a long and messy love triangle that included her stepson. There's a custody battle over the kids, and in the end, a man who's found decapitated in his bed, with his body doused in chemicals. And his head, it's never been found. Now the case is about porn star Devyn Michaels, and we're going to explore what happened on the night that Jonathan Willett died. I want to review the motive that unfolded. You can't make this stuff up. Now this is a bonus episode to True Crime Tuesday, and as always, I hope it punches you and pushes you to think like an investigator and consider the role that behavior and geography play in the choices these criminals make. And remember, if you've got any questions about this case or any case we talk about on True Crime Tuesdays, email me at profilingevil@gmail.com. Or you can shoot me a quick video on your phone and upload it with the link that I've got down in the description below. And your question will end up on Feedback Friday. Now, Devyn Michaels is this former adult film performer who later worked as a real estate agent. She's gone by a bunch of different aliases, but she and the victim, Jonathan Willett, have 2 daughters together. And keep in mind, they never married, but they shared history. They shared these 2 daughters, and they bounced through a long on-again, off-again relationship. Devyn's life took a turn that is hard for most people to even wrap their minds around. She began a relationship with Jonathan. Now that's her common law husband that she had those 2 daughters with. And she had an affair with his son, Devyn. Now he's the child, again, of the victim in this case. And eventually she married Devyn. Some say secretly, although he eventually found out, her ex did. He became, in essence, not only his common law wife and co-parent to these daughters, he became Devyn's father-in-law. Same man, same house of cards. I hope you're getting all this because it is crazy. Now add in this, in the months leading up to his death, Jonathan won full custody of the 2 children that the couple have together. So in order to bring some stability to the family, he was going to move into Devyn's home where she's living with his son that she's now married to in hopes of bringing the family together. So think about the emotional cocktail in that house. I mean, these 2 exes trying to co-parent, kids in the middle, a grown son who's now a husband, and a set of loyalties that are completely tangled. Prosecutors said this move of Jonathan coming into the house the thing that kind of conflicts with Devyn and Devier's daily life was the fuse that lit everything on fire. Now, folks, I'm going to move into the truck because it's starting to rain on me here, so stand by. Okay, so now we're going to add this in. In the months leading up to his death, Jonathan won full custody of the two girls, and that, in hopes of bringing stability together, he decided that he would move into Devyn's home in Las Vegas. Now think about the emotional cocktail that's going on in this house, because these are two exes trying to co-parent kids. In the middle of all of this is a grown son who now is also Devyn's husband, and there is a set of loyalties that are completely tangled. Now, prosecutors said this move of Jonathan coming into the house was the fuse that lit this candle. And on the night of August 6, 2023, Jonathan, while at the home that he shares with his mother in Henderson, Nevada, has Devyn come over. Devyn is seen on surveillance video, and there's all kinds of digital forensics that places her there. They leave the home and come back, making a couple of little shopping runs here and there. Surveillance catches them returning home around 10 p.m. Jonathan's mother would later testify that she saw the two come into the house at 10 p.m. and she went to bed. Now, it was the early morning hours of the following day, August 7th, that she heard a loud noise. She thought it was her son and Devyn arguing. Maybe she thought she heard a door slamming, but she heard the dogs outside barking, and that was completely out of character. Now, she doesn't investigate the noise any further, and she falls asleep. But this gives us a timeline of when things happened, because between 10 p.m. and 2, there's a catastrophe that unfolds. Now, the next morning around 8 a.m., the victim's mother goes out and sees his truck in the driveway, wonders why he's still home because he would have had to have gone to work. She's concerned, so she calls him on his mobile phone, which he doesn't answer. She then decides to check his room, and she discovers the most shocking scene that she could imagine. In fact, it was so shocking that experienced detectives would later describe this as one of the worst crime scenes they've seen in their career. Jonathan was lying headless in his bed. The crime scene was gruesome, and there were bottles of bleach and ammonia near his bed. The room stunk of bleach and ammonia. And it was reported that the wound where the head should have been was smoking, as if the chemicals were sitting and cooking what was left behind. And to this day, the severed head has never been found. Now, from a behavioral standpoint, that's not just a homicide. That is overkill. And according to later confession, Michaels, after administering a blunt force trauma blow to his head, then, based on evidence, went to the kitchen and obtained a meat cleaver, returned to the bedroom and tried to decapitate the man, and apparently was not completely successful, because at some point, this man's head was actually removed by an electric or motorized tool. Now, one thing is clear from the autopsy. He was not alive at the moment of the decapitation. But the question is, how long had he been dead? Because she remained in the house for about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes before leaving. And the other thing that seems to be supported by the evidence and testimony is that she then doused him in chemicals, likely to mess with the DNA or odor or decomposition or all of the above. You know, we see this disorganized behavior so often when people try to get bleach and other things to try to clean up a crime scene. But this kind of effort takes time. It takes physical effort. And it takes a level of emotional detachment that's really hard for us to wrap our heads around. Now, from a behavioral standpoint, what happened to Jonathan was clearly overkill. Violence that was far beyond what was necessary to cause death. Now, prosecutors say that Devyn Michaels didn't just kill him. First, after giving him a massage, she struck him with something heavy, some blunt force object. And then, about an hour later, she decapitated him. Now, she even left the home with the head in her possession. and she drove toward the city of Las Vegas, just over here, where she disposed of it by tossing it in the trash. Now, that level of brutality signals rage, emotional escalation, and frankly, deep personal grievances. This is not a calculated or an efficient homicide. In fact, it's a very disorganized crime scene. But here's the thing about overkill. It almost always points to an intimate relationship of some kind, a volatile emotional bond perhaps, or a perceived betrayal. And in this case, the tangled triangle between Devyn, Jonathan, and his son Devier all forms exactly the kind of pressure cooker where this kind of explosive violence can erupt. The crime scene was horrific, and most people wouldn't have been able to even enter that room, but Michaels did. And she went in and she stayed there long enough to decapitate him, to stage the crime scene, to try to clean it, and then to transport his head to some parts unknown. And while the crime scene techs were processing the bedroom after this thing was discovered, other officers started doing what modern investigators do. They were following the digital trail. So when detectives headed over to Devyn's place in the northwest part of the valley, they noticed some pretty odd things before they even knocked on the door. First thing is they discovered, after having a daughter find this phone, that Jonathan's phone had been found lying in the driveway. It was cracked, and it appeared to have blood on the screen. Now, it would actually be blood after examining it, but it all appears like it was part of either staging by Michaels. In effect, she was setting up her new husband for the murder, or she just flat was so disorganized that as she tried to carry his things in, his wallet, his phone, and other things, that she dropped the phone unexpectedly on the driveway. Now, I hope you're keeping up here, because she's just re-entered her own home with all of the victim's property in her hands. Now, once law enforcement served a search warrant on her home, they turned up more of Jonathan's property: his wallet, his identification, his truck keys, a social security card. And the social security card, dug from inside of his wallet, had her DNA on it. These were all pieces of his life that should have been with him, where he was discovered murdered. But instead, they were scattered around her house. Now, if you're an investigator, you're going to ask yourself, what does this tell me about the movement, the timeline, the state of mind of Devyn? Because it's kind of interesting. Is it panic behavior? Because panic behavior would be somebody who runs out of the house screaming for help. But this is somebody who's collecting items, who's moving phones, who's driving in the dark and then going back and forth between locations. And police actually interviewed Michaels 3 or 4 times, but on the 3rd or 4th interview, she actually admitted that she and Jonathan were together that night. She said they'd done some shopping for school supplies for the girls, and that she was rubbing his back in bed, and that at some point he tried to have sex with her. Now, she says she was so angry that she got up and she hit him with something heavy, a wooden stick or something similar. Now, she says she doesn't remember any of what happened after that. And she said she didn't mean to kill him. She just wanted to hurt him bad enough to put him in the hospital. Now, Michael says she can't remember anything. And this kind of response, it's pretty common in cases like this. Things where they say, like, I just wanted to scare him, or I blacked out, or I only meant to hurt him in a little bit of a way. Well, meanwhile, the victim's mother, back at the murder scene, notices something else that really troubles her. A meat cleaver is missing from the kitchen. Now, combine that with the clean cut at the neck, then the sawing of the head off, all of that, prosecutors started building a theory that whoever killed Jonathan used a large bladed weapon, possibly that cleaver, and a cutting tool to remove the head, and that most likely Devyn carried that head away. And when it was revealed in court that Jonathan's blood was discovered with Devyn, Well, that sealed the deal for many people because keep this in mind. The decapitation happened after death. The ME, the medical examiner, has made that very clear. In fact, the defense medical expert also said cause of death before the decapitation. So detectives were increasingly convinced that all of this had been done by Michaels. So put yourself in the jury box. I mean, you're hearing about a headless body, a smoking wound from chemicals, a missing cleaver, phones discovered in Devyn's house, forensic data that's tying her directly to Jonathan's house when the murder occurs, and then carrying all of his stuff back to her house, going to Vegas and back. All of it is really interesting and very powerful forensic evidence. And the state was making an incredibly compelling argument. So by the end of those first few days of investigations, detectives had a headless body, a missing weapon, a digital trail that seemed to lead straight from the crime scene in Henderson, Nevada, to a driveway in Las Vegas. But this case was about to get even stranger because Devyn Michaels didn't just share children with Jonathan, she shared a marriage certificate with his son. And many people say it was all about a predacious way of her controlling the boy. She was about 39 years old, the boy 19. Well, when the case against Devyn Michaels finally went to trial, prosecutors branded it exactly what most of us would see, a love triangle with a body at the center. Their theory was pretty straightforward. They say that Devyn wanted the future with Devier, the son of the victim, and she wanted her daughters free of any of the chaos that came with her former co-parent, Jonathan. And with Jonathan winning full custody of their shared children, prosecutors say Devyn saw her opportunity to get the family the way she wanted it, and that caused her to commit homicide. Well, they believe that Devyn believed that if Jonathan moved into the house, again, remember, he had legal control of the kids, that she was going to start to lose out. And she wasn't willing to have Jonathan in daily proximity, nor was she going to share this space with this creepy relationship between her and his 19-year-old son, who now is her husband. That is an incredibly volatile setup. The state argued that the only way Devyn could have the future that she was fantasizing would be for Devier to be acting as a dad to the girls, not as their half-brother. And the only way to make that happen was to get Jonathan out of the picture permanently. And that's how they argue things happened in their opening statement. They said the murder was calculated and premeditated. They said she lured Jonathan into a vulnerable position, struck him on the head, and then spent hours cleaning, decapitating, and trying to erase the evidence with chemicals before driving off with his head. And where she dumped that head, nobody knows. Now, the prosecution talked about the overkill and talked about control. They laid out how the victim's body, even after a decapitation, was moved on the bed and then doused in bleach and ammonia, how the head was removed, and how his personal items were taken back to her residence. The defense strategy in the trial was to embrace the dysfunctional family dynamic, and holy cow, it was dysfunctional. They, the prosecution, everybody agrees that it's a twisted situation. Devyn was married to her former common law husband and co-parent to her two daughters, 19-year-old son, Devier. He's much younger than her, and that made him, her former common law husband, her father-in-law. There was jealousy, there was tension, there were arguments. But the defense keeps saying, hey, but that doesn't mean that Devyn is a killer. Instead, they pointed the finger at the kid, Devier. They say Devier was threatened by his father, that his father was going to move in, and that this kid didn't want his dad coming back in the house and taking over the role of the man of the house. They highlighted text messages about conflicts where Devyn had talked about divorcing Devier and leaving the marriage. And they suggested that Devier may have snapped and killed his father in order to keep her around. They also emphasized that nobody has recovered the head or the murder weapon. They also argued that there was no surveillance video showing Devyn walking out of the house carrying, I guess, the head in a bag. And they emphasized that the coroner couldn't give a classic cause of death because the head was missing. And of course, there was all that chemical damage. But the prosecution did a great job of reminding us that because a defendant happens to hide evidence, they don't get rewarded for that. And the defense continued on, reminding the jury that Devyn had originally taken a plea deal of second-degree murder with the possibility of parole after 15 years. But then, just before her trial, she changed her mind and she claimed that she had only pled guilty because everybody told her it was the safest option. Now, there was a dramatic sentencing hearing, and she broke down in court. She was screaming. She said the evidence was manipulated, and she insisted that she could prove her innocence. Well, that outburst led the judge to allow her to withdraw the plea, and it sent the case back to a full trial. And that is what we were just ending and what she was found guilty of. So keep that in mind as we go back and play that moment in the plea where she changed her plea negotiation and said not guilty and forced this thing to go back to trial. Let's watch.
Jonathan was very special, very unique, and I know no matter what I say at this moment, I know right now no one in the family is going to believe me. I know right now no one in the family feels that I'm innocent at any point, and I understand that, but I can actually prove my innocence. I actually can, and I'm not going to stop fighting to prove my innocence. I have more than enough, and Jonathan deserves to have the actual person who's guilty behind bars. I was helping Jonathan. I can show that I was trying to help him, and this I know is hurting the family, and I can see it in your faces, and I know your hearts are angry, and they should be, and I'm angry for you. And this is not fair to you. This has been dragging out for almost 2 years. It's not fair to you. And it's not fair to his children. Any of them. And it's not right. It really isn't. It's not. I've seen so much that it's just terrible. The way that they manipulated and altered and deleted things is wrong. They should not be able to do it, and they have. And for you to be able to look me in the eye knowing that the things are altered and...
You pled guilty, man.
Ms. Michaels, you are not to address the state. You are to address me.
You are.
You're addressing Mr. Giordani. You are going to address me. What do you want me to say? What do you want to say to me?
My apologies. I wasn't trying to address the state directly. It's just, I was told. I just told one thing after another, and I truly believed that we were going to do the right thing, and it just didn't happen. I am so sorry for all of this, but I am so sorry. But I didn't do this, and I didn't know this would end up like this. I really didn't. And I will forever apologize to the family. But I don't know how to fix any of this anymore. I don't. I keep listening to what everyone tells me is the best thing to do. Just do this and it'll work out this way and follow this advice and we'll do this. And I keep listening to the people because they keep saying this is the best advice. It doesn't turn out the way they tell me it will. And it just gets worse and worse. And I don't know what to do anymore.
Judge, I'm not comfortable with this record. I'm willing to let her out of her plea if the court is inclined.
I don't know how to face this.
All right.
It's just, this wouldn't be appropriate.
I completely understand.
Let's go to trial.
Mr. Giordani. All right. Ms. Michaels, Judge Mr. Giordani says that he's willing to let you out of your plea and he's willing to try this case. And you understand that he's willing to try this case on an open murder. So a jury can convict you of a first-degree murder. Do you understand that? Or do you want to talk to Mr. Patrick about it?
I don't want to talk to Mr. Patrick. He didn't listen to anything I said.
Miss Michaels, I need you to understand what I'm saying to you and answer my question.
Yes.
Do you want to withdraw your plea and go to trial?
Yes, please.
All right. This plea is going to be withdrawn. Ms. Patrick, I need you to have some discussions with your client about...
Your Honor, I've moved to withdraw at this time. This case needs to go back to the appointed counsel.
Miss
I will-
Michaels, hold on just one second. Miss Michaels, you need to conduct yourself like this is a courtroom. If you cannot do that, then they're going to remove you because I still have business to conduct.
Yes.
Do you understand? Mr. Patrick?
Judge, respectfully, I move to withdraw and have this case sent back to Office of Appointed Counsel. I am not in a position to accept appointment on this case should it go to trial at this time.
All right. All right, I'm going to have to reach out to the Office of Appointed Counsel and get her a lawyer that's going to be appointed with the understanding this case is 2 years old. This case is not going to sit stagnant and wait around for a trial. So I'm going to reach out to Ms. Bush myself and have a discussion with her in regards to the appointment of counsel because this is not going to be, this case has been delayed extensively, and this case is not going to further be delayed so that there is no justice for everybody.
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, during the trial that she just was convicted in, the defense painted her as an overwhelmed woman who was manipulated. Maybe she hit Jonathan, but she didn't decapitate him in their opinion. And she certainly didn't desecrate his body. Now, they argued that investigators were so focused on her that they quit considering any other suspects as an option. Now, the problem for the defense, though, was that the digital evidence put her there at the home and Devier at his home during the murder. There was evidence. There were the kids at home. All of this put only Devyn at the crime scene during that critical window. There were no cell phone pings off of Devier's phone, no car data, no eyewitnesses that placed Devier in the bedroom in the middle of the night. And remember, the victim's mother did put Devyn in that bedroom. And then there was Devyn's own mouth, her confession. And then the courtroom pivoted. You see, because during the investigation, Devyn had admitted to hitting Jonathan in the head while he was lying in bed. Now, again, she said she just wanted to hurt him. But that's a huge hurdle for any defense team to get over. And in their closing arguments, the prosecutors reminded the jury flat out by saying, hey, anytime there's a confession, it's difficult for the defense to defend that. Well, they had so much evidence against Devyn that it was a very difficult thing for her to overcome anyway. But remember, the state didn't have to prove exactly how every cut was made or what tool was used for the decapitation. They just had to prove that she caused his death and that she did it with malice. And the evidence supports that it was willful and premeditated. And from a behavioral standpoint, I want you to just pause and think about the whole picture that the jury saw, because they saw a long and troubled relationship. They saw a horrendous crime scene. They saw a bizarre marriage to the victim's son. They saw custody battles that were changing hands. They showed this new move-in plan which threatened the status quo. And they showed the victim and the defendant together on the night that he died. All of that made this too large of a mountain for her to overcome. And remember that the victim's phone and property somehow ended up in the defendant's home. And by her own admission to the detectives, she said, "I struck him. I wanted to hurt him, but I didn't want to kill him." You can see why the prosecution felt that they could overcome the fact that the head's missing. So by the time both sides finished their closing arguments, jurors were left with two competing stories. A calculated mother who had eliminated the father of her children to build a new life with his son, or on the other end, a woman who delivered one reckless blow and has been covering for a jealous, out of control husband ever since. Well, after nearly 2 years of delays, it all came down to a handful of hours in a jury room. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the verdict, what the jurors focused on, and what this case teaches us about risk, relationships, and evidence. Well, when the jury finally got the case of Devyn Michaels, it didn't take long for them in returning a verdict. It was about 2 hours of deliberation, and they came back with a guilty verdict. And now, Devyn Michaels faces 51 years to life in prison. Now, according to reports after the verdict, some jurors told attorneys that they had lingering doubts right up to the moment that they heard about Devyn's own confession. They said that admission of her striking him in the head, that was the thing that clicked it all into place. Then, the rest of the timeline, the digital trail, the chemical staging, the balance of power, all tipped. So here I am in Las Vegas following this criminal case, and I keep thinking about how often we see this pattern play out through these cases we look at. Love triangles, custody, money, somebody deciding the only way out is to erase the other party. But all of this leaves me with a question of what are we going to take away from the Devyn Michaels case beyond the shock factor? I think first it's going to be a reminder to us that relationships can be filled with risk factors. This wasn't a stranger breaking into a home. It was a tangle of ex-husbands and wives, children, step relationships, places where boundaries were evaporating. And when you have unresolved grievances, financial dependencies, custody battles, blurred roles all under one roof, the risk goes up. Now, second, I think it shows how post-crime behavior can be as important as the moment of violence. Because you can't pour bleach on a body, remove the head, move phones, take IDs, and say, "Hey, I just lost control for a second." You can't commit murder like that and then say, "Hey, I can't remember." Everything that happens after that fatal blow tells investigators whether this was panic, self-defense, or a calculated cover-up. Third, I think it highlights the power of digital forensics. Because without the phone and car data, prosecutors would have had a much tougher time putting this all together. But with it, they could chart Devyn's movements almost minute by minute from the Henderson home, the place where that murder occurred, to Las Vegas and back. Even when the head and the weapon came up missing, the data trail didn't stop talking. And finally, this case shows how volatile plea deals can be. Devyn had the deal of a lifetime on the table, second-degree murder with the possibility of parole after 15 years. Well, in a dramatic hearing where she said she could prove her innocence, that the evidence was altered, and where she begged the judge to let her withdraw the plea, the judge agreed. And now she's going to prison, probably for the rest of her life. And from an investigative standpoint, nothing about this changes the grief that Jonathan's family has, or the trauma those children are going through, including the 19-year-old son. But as students of crime, each of us can look at this and ask, where were the warning signs? What did friends and family see that they ignored? What patterns might have been visible long before August 7th when that murder occurred? And these are all questions that I hope you'll chew on a little bit. And I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode, from the rain in Las Vegas to the inside of my truck. I hope you'll put your comments down below. And if you've got any questions about the Devyn Michaels case, or about evidence, the verdict, sentencing, or other cases, please send them over to me to profilingevil@gmail.com. Or record a short video on your phone and upload it by using the link I put down in the description area. And remember that by sending the question in, you're giving me permission to use your first name and your question right here on these shows. I'd love to build a whole segment around what bothers you folks the most about this case or others. And if you've got something out of this breakdown, take a second and hit the like and subscribe button. And if you haven't already, make sure you've rung that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our episodes. And then share Profiling Evil with your friends, especially with your friends who love to think about cases at this kind of a level. And remember that you can find more resources and my books, including my new book, Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, sign up for the BOLO newsletter. It stands for Be on the Lookout. And the only way you can get the BOLO is by signing up at profilingevil.com. And please make sure you're watching for, and I hope you're subscribing to my brand new project, the Gardens of Evil podcast, which drops February 3rd through our partner Gamut Podcast Network. I am so excited to be working with Gamut on our audio podcasts. Hey, thanks for being here with me in Las Vegas, Nevada for this bonus breakdown. I'm Mike King, and this is Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.